Olympia.
Yes. Politico reported something earlier today that you had a conversation with John Cornine about running. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Have you had some conversations, and do you plan to run again?
Well, I'm focused on the 2010 elections and helping out the outstanding candidates we have here in Virginia, as well as helping out folks like Marco Rubio and Portman and Blunt and so forth. And so that's what I'm focused on. And I do believe the elections this year and in 2012 will set the trajectory of our country, whether we're going to continue declining or we're going to start ascending. Conversations that I may have that are private, I think ought to be kept private.
Can you just say in general terms where you are in evaluating 2012 and what sort of timetable you have?
The timetable, there's no timetable. The timetable I'm looking at, and Susan and I have been all over the Commonwealth helping out folks from Keith Fimian and Patrick Murray in Northern Virginia to Morgan Griffith in your area, as well as Robert Hurt and Keith Fimian and Chuck Smith. That's our timetable, is that of all the candidates who I think are just really great common sense conservatives who I'd love to see in Washington. It'd be a great, you'd have some great reinforcements from Virginia. And so that's my focus. And as far as the next elections, I'll consider that afterwards. There's a lot of people who have been encouraging Susan and me to get back into it. There are a lot of them here at this convention. And it's nice to hear that. It's something one takes into consideration, but as far as political focus and efforts, it's all focused on the elections that are coming up this November. And then after that election, then we'll consider future elections.
I posed this question earlier to your former colleague, Senator Santorum. Would there be room in today's Republican Party for a Barry Goldwater or a Ronald Reagan?
Oh, obviously. Ronald Reagan, in fact, I didn't say it. I thought that my first involvement in organized politics had a lot of similar sentiments to this now. That was in 1976 when Ronald Reagan ran for president. And Governor Reagan asked me to chair Young Virginians for Reagan. And I was anti-establishment and rebellious and all of that, and still have that anti-establishment sentiment in me. And so being for Reagan in 76 were folks who cared about ideas and principles, running against an incumbent president at the time, Gerald Ford. We won Virginia, lost the nomination, but then others all later by 1980 realized Ronald Reagan's the leader we needed for our country. And so some of the folks here at the Tea Party might have been involved in it, some of them might not have even been born in 76. So, someone like Ronald Reagan, I hear from so many people is, who's the next Ronald Reagan? There's a thirsting, there's a desire for Ronald Reagan. Now, people thinking there's going to be a second Ronald Reagan, I think will generally be disappointed because there'll not be another Ronald Reagan. We're going to be celebrating his election victory this fall. We'll celebrate his 100th birthday next year. And I'm Reagan Ranch Presidential Scholar for the Young Americans Foundation. So I'm speaking on a lot of campuses, a lot of folks talking to about Ronald Reagan. And what we can learn from Ronald Reagan is what are the things he talked about. It's just like we can learn from Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and the founders. But Ronald Reagan's the one who turned this country around. The country was in worse shape when Ronald Reagan came in than it is now. The difference, though, is while the interest rates were higher then, unemployment was as bad as it is now. Clearly, the unemployment's still in bad shape. Interest and inflation is worse. In Reagan's days in turning it around, our competition for America were a few Western European countries and Japan. Our competition now is all of Europe, Japan, South Korea, China, Malaysia, Singapore, India, Brazil, Australia, and many other countries. And so that's why it's more important than ever that we have people in government understand that our country, to be able to get the investments where people can get the jobs to achieve their dreams, and our quality of life is a good one, as opposed to diminished or harmed, is more important than ever, because some of these other countries are going pedal to the metal, and we have folks in Washington who are just bumbling in the pits and harming and burdening our country with whether it's dangerous levels of debt, counterproductive energy policy, higher taxes, or a variety of things that make it more difficult for Americans in their lives, at their kitchen tables, and their families, and their businesses.
Follow-up, though, is there a role for Goldwater Republicans in the 21st century?
How would you define a gold? Yes, I think there's a role for all sorts of Republicans of all sorts of stripes. I'm not sure how you define a Goldwater Republican, but yes, I would think so. Whether it's Ronald Reagan Republicans or Goldwater Republicans or Dwight Eisenhower Republicans or Abraham Lincoln Republicans, you can go through all the Republican nominees. Yes, it's a broad and diverse party, and we welcome everyone to it. And I think the way you welcome and build a party is not just for the sake of a party. It is to have the ideas and solutions that make sense to people who pay taxes, work for a living, and care about their families.